He was born into a world that never gave him a chance. His neighborhood was filled with broken dreams, where success was just a story on TV. His mother worked double shifts just to put food on the table, but it was never enough. The landlord didn't care about their struggles, and eviction notices were a constant threat. School felt pointless. How could he focus on grades when his stomach growled from hunger? With no father around and no role models to look up to, he turned to the streets for guidance. The older kids in the neighborhood had money, nice shoes, and respect, but they didn't earn it the honest way. He watched as they rolled up in flashy cars, handing out advice like, "If you want to eat, you gotta hustle." It sounded like the only way out. Nobody ever told him about college, investments, or building a future. Survival was the only lesson taught in his world. At home, the pressure never stopped. Bills piled up, and his mom's exhaustion turned into quiet despair. He swore he'd take care of her one day, but with no legal way to make money fast, temptation lurked around every corner. The streets offered what school never could: quick cash and a sense of belonging. One bad decision didn't feel like a big deal, but bad decisions don't stay small for long. What started as just helping out turned into something much bigger. He found himself in situations he never imagined. Money in his pocket, fear in his heart. Deep down, he knew this wasn't the life he wanted. But when you're trapped between poverty and crime, the exit isn't always clear. And sometimes you don't realize you've crossed a line until it's too late. Started small, running errands, making quick drops, keeping his head down. The money came fast, faster than any minimum wage job ever could. For the first time, he didn't have to worry about whether his mom could pay the bills. But the rush of fast cash is addictive, and soon, small favors turned into bigger risks. Desperation clouded his judgment. Each step deeper felt justified. After all, wasn't he just doing what he had to do to survive? Then came the night that changed everything. One job, one bad call. It was supposed to be simple: pick up, drop off, get paid. But in the world he had stepped into, nothing was ever that easy. Sirens, flashing lights. His heart pounded as he ran, but there was nowhere to go. The streets that once felt like home now caged him in. The cold metal of handcuffs around his wrists made it real. This wasn't just another close call. His life had just taken a turn he couldn't undo. Sitting in the back of the police car, reality sank in. The system didn't care about his reasons. No one wanted to hear about poverty, desperation, or the lack of opportunities. In their eyes, he was just another criminal, another statistic. As the courtroom doors shut behind him, so did the doors to the life he once knew. The judge's words were final. His future was no longer his to control. Prison wasn't just about confinement, it was about survival. He was thrown into a world where trust didn't exist and every day was a fight to keep his dignity. The weight of his mistakes pressed on him, heavier than any chain. He thought about his mother, alone, struggling without him. Was this really how his story was going to end? Or was there still a way to rewrite his future? Prison wasn't just a sentence, it was a different world, built on rules no one explained. Every step, every glance, every word had consequences. The noise never stopped. Metal doors slamming, guards yelling, fights breaking out over nothing. At night, when the chaos settled, the silence was even worse. That's when the thoughts crept in. Regret, guilt, the faces of people he let down. His mother's voice on the phone, trying to sound strong, but he could hear the pain she was hiding. The friends who once swore loyalty, they disappeared the moment he got locked up. No calls, no letters, no visits. The people he risked everything for had moved on without him. It hit him hard. He had been nothing more than a disposable piece in their game. Meanwhile, his mother, the one he thought he was helping, was struggling more than ever. She was the only one who still cared. The only one who never gave up on him. But how much longer could he let her suffer because of his choices? One day, he looked around and saw his future staring back at him. Men who had been locked up for decades. Men who had lost everything. Men who had accepted that prison was the only life they'd ever know. Was that going to be him? Was this how his story ended? Something inside him snapped. No more excuses. No more blaming the system, the streets, or his past. He had made the choices that led him here, and now he had to make the choices that would get him out and keep him out for good. But deciding to change was one thing. Figuring out how was another. He had no connections, no plan, just time. Time to think. Time to learn. So he did the only thing he could. He picked up a book. Then another. Then another. He read about business, about money, about people who had built success from nothing. If there was a way out, the answers had to be somewhere. He didn't know it yet, but that first book would become the first step toward a future he never imagined possible. At first, reading was just a way to escape, a way to block out the walls closing in around him. But as he turned the pages, something changed. These weren't just stories. They were blueprints. Men who had built fortunes from nothing, people who had failed and started over. He saw himself in those stories, in their struggles, in their comebacks. If they could rewrite their lives, why couldn't he? For the first time, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, hope. Then, he met someone who would change everything. An older inmate, quiet but respected, noticed his hunger for knowledge. Unlike the others, this man wasn't wasting time. He was preparing for a life beyond these walls. "You got two choices," he told him one day. "You can let this place define you, or you can use it to rebuild yourself." That conversation sparked something deeper. If he wanted a second chance, he had to earn it. His past didn't have to be his future. So he got to work. He spent hours in the prison library, studying business, finance, and personal development. He learned about investments, how money worked, how people built wealth. He started writing down ideas, planning, dreaming. He even took classes when they were available, anything to sharpen his mind. Others passed time playing cards or watching TV. He spent his time building the person he wanted to become. The person he needed to be if he ever got out. And then, something shifted inside him. He stopped seeing himself as a victim. He wasn't just a guy who made mistakes. He was a man with a future. A future he could control. It wouldn't be easy. Society wouldn't make it easy. But he had already survived rock bottom. Now he was ready to fight for something bigger. Redemption wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a plan. And the moment he walked out of that prison gate, he would prove to the world and to himself that he wasn't the same man who walked in. When he stepped out of those prison gates, the world felt different, but not in the way he had hoped. No applause, no second chances waiting for him. Just an empty sidewalk and the cold truth. He was free, but he had nothing. No money, no job, no place in society. His record followed him like a shadow, closing doors before he could even knock. Employers didn't care about the man he had become. They only saw the mistakes he had made. Rejection became his new reality. Job interviews ended the moment they asked about his past. Applications got tossed aside. Even places hiring entry-level workers wanted a clean background. The same world that told him to change refused to give him the chance to prove he had. Some days, the weight of it all felt unbearable. He had done everything right. Educated himself, planned for the future, but none of it seemed to matter. The old life, the easy money was still there calling him back. But he had already made his choice. He wasn't going to let his past win. If no one would hire him, he'd find another way. He took whatever odd jobs he could, cleaning, moving furniture, anything to get by. It was humiliating at times, but he swallowed his pride. Every dollar he earned the right way felt like a step forward. He reminded himself that every great success story started somewhere. His would start here in the struggle. Still, doubt crept in at night. Would things ever change? Was he chasing something impossible? But every time he considered giving up, he remembered the men who never made it out, who gave in, who accepted failure. That wasn't going to be him. He had come too far, lost too much to stop now. He didn't just want a second chance, he was going to create one. No matter what it took. He knew no one was going to hand him an opportunity. He had to create one. With every rejection, one truth became clearer. The only way forward was to work for himself. He thought back to the books he read in prison, the lessons about business and finance. If others had built something from nothing, so could he. With the little money he had saved from odd jobs, he bought a used lawnmower. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He went door to door, offering to cut grass for whatever people were willing to pay. At first, they looked at him with suspicion. Some turned him away the moment they learned about his past. Others underpaid him, assuming he had no other options. But he kept showing up, working harder than anyone else. He was the first to arrive, the last to leave. Slowly, word spread. One client turned into 2, then 5, then 10. The same people who doubted him began to trust him. Not because of his words, but because of his work. He wasn't just cutting grass, he was rebuilding his life one lawn at a time. But success didn't come easy. Equipment broke. Clients disappeared. Some months he barely made enough to cover his bills. More than once he thought about quitting, about finding something easier. But then he reminded himself, no one was coming to save him. He had made it this far by refusing to give up. He studied business strategies at night, learning how to price his services, how to market himself, how to grow. Every failure became a lesson. Every setback a test of how badly he wanted this. Then he caught his first real break. A local business owner, impressed by his determination, offered him a contract to maintain multiple properties. It was more money than he had ever made legally. For the first time he saw it, his future, his chance to build something real. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was winning. And this was only the beginning. The first real check felt unreal, money he had earned the right way, with his own hands, his own effort. It wasn't millions, but it was his. No guilt, no fear of looking over his shoulder. For the first time, he saw the power of owning something. He reinvested every dollar, buying better equipment, hiring help, expanding his services. What started with a single lawnmower was now a real business. People who once ignored him were now calling, asking for his services. Growth came fast, but so did the challenges. Managing money, dealing with customers, handling employees, it was all new to him. He made mistakes, lost money, trusted the wrong people. Some contracts fell through and some months were tight. But he refused to quit. Every night he studied, reading about business, marketing, leadership. He learned to negotiate, to network, to think like an entrepreneur. The lessons from prison, from rejection, from failure, all of it had prepared him for this. The more he grew, the more people doubted him. Some still saw him as just another ex-con waiting to fail. But he used their doubt as fuel. He didn't just want success. He needed to prove that change was real, that redemption was possible. His company expanded beyond lawn care, moving into property maintenance, then real estate. He saved aggressively, invested wisely, and built multiple streams of income. What once seemed impossible was now happening right in front of him. Then came the moment he had dreamed of, walking into a bank, not as a desperate man begging for a chance, but as a business owner, an investor, a success story. The same world that once shut him out was now welcoming him in. He had built something no one could take away from him. He had rewritten his story. And he wasn't done yet. Success didn't erase his past. No matter how much he achieved, some people still refused to see him as anything other than a criminal. He heard the whispers, saw the skepticism in their eyes. Once a criminal, always a criminal, they'd say. Some refused to do business with him, others waited for him to fail. It didn't matter how hard he worked. His past was always the first thing people saw. But he had already spent too much of his life proving people wrong. He wasn't about to stop now. At first, the judgment got to him. It was frustrating to know that, no matter what, some would never accept his success. But he learned to tune it out. He focused on the people who mattered, the clients who trusted him, the employees who depended on him, the family that had never given up on him. He reminded himself why he started. This wasn't just about money. It was about proving that redemption was real, that mistakes didn't have to define a person forever. Instead of running from his past, he owned it. He spoke openly about where he came from, about the lessons prison taught him. He shared his story with struggling young men, with ex-convicts looking for a second chance. He showed them that change was possible, that success wasn't reserved for people with perfect records. His past wasn't a burden. It was a lesson, one that could inspire others to break free from their own cycles of failure. And slowly the narrative changed. People stopped seeing him as just an ex-con. They saw him as an entrepreneur, a mentor, a man who had rebuilt his life from nothing. The same society that once rejected him now invited him to speak, to share his journey. The world had doubted him, but he had never doubted himself. And that made all the difference. The day he saw his bank account cross the $1 million mark, he just sat there in silence. No celebration, no big moment. Just a deep breath as he let it sink in. He had once walked out of prison with nothing, rejected by the world, forced to start from scratch. Now he had built something real. A business, a legacy, a life that no one could take from him. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He had won. And yet, this wasn't the finish line. It was just the beginning. With success came a new purpose. Money alone didn't fulfill him. He had already lived at rock bottom, and he knew that true wealth wasn't just about numbers. So he started giving back. He created job opportunities for ex-convicts, helping men who had once stood where he did. He mentored young people, showing them that they had choices, that their future wasn't set in stone. He donated to programs that helped former inmates rebuild their lives. His success wasn't just his own, it was meant to lift others up. Looking back, he could hardly recognize the man he used to be. The kid who made bad choices out of desperation. The prisoner who thought his life was over. The ex-convict knocking on doors, begging for a chance. Each version of himself had been necessary to get here. Every mistake, every failure, every rejection had been part of the process. He realized now that the struggle wasn't a curse. It was his greatest gift. Without it, he would have never found his true strength. Now, when people asked about his past, he didn't hide it. He told his story with pride, not shame. Not because he was proud of his mistakes, but because he was proud of what he had become. He had turned his darkest moments into his greatest lessons. He had proven that redemption was real. And most importantly, he had shown that no matter how low someone falls, there is always a way back up. If there's one thing his story proves, it's that failure isn't the end. It's just the beginning. He had every excuse to give up, to believe that his mistakes had permanently ruined his future. But he chose to see failure differently. Every setback, every rejection, every moment of doubt was a lesson, a step towards something greater. The difference between those who stay down and those who rise again isn't luck, it's mindset. And once he changed his, everything else followed. Anyone can turn their life around, no matter where they start. It doesn't matter how broken the past is, what matters is what you do next. He wasn't handed opportunities. He created them. He wasn't given second chances. He fought for them. The road to success wasn't easy, but it was possible. And that's the key possibility. The moment you believe that change is real, that success is within reach, you start making decisions that push you toward it. The only person who can stop you is yourself. But belief alone isn't enough. He learned the hard way that success requires 3 things: persistence, self-education, and an unshakable refusal to give up. When the world shut him out, he kept going. When he didn't know something, he learned. When people doubted him, he proved them wrong. No one else is responsible for your success, you are. And the moment you take ownership of your future, everything changes. Not instantly, not easily, but step by step, day by day, just like it did for him. So now he turns to you. What's stopping you from rewriting your own story? What excuse have you been holding on to? If a man who lost everything, who hit rock bottom, who had every reason to quit, could rise up and build a life beyond his wildest dreams, so can you. But it starts with a choice. A choice to fight, to learn, to push forward no matter what. Will you make that choice today? Let us know in the comments. What's your biggest takeaway from this story? And if you found this inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your breakthrough might be closer than you think.